All right. Hello. I'm Lori from Lore's World, and we are going out to Wyoming this evening to talk to another recovering fellow addict, alcoholic. I don't know the whole story, but we are soon going to find out. His name is Marty, and he's been sober for 20 years. It's funny because he was also anonymous like I was. He was not recovering out loud for the longest time until about a year and a half ago, as I did. So we've got a little bit in common there, and I'd like to talk to him about that. I'm excited to talk to him, and we have some friends in common, and we'll get to see what his story is all about and share it with all of you. Thank you for doing this. Honestly, thank you for doing this. And, I was just really excited about talking to you because we kind of felt the same way about the whole recovering out loud for a long time. And
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, we're not supposed to be saying anything out loud. we
I know.
we sneak down into the church basements and hope nobody's looking over us.
Exactly. And see people at the grocery store and act like you know them from somewhere else. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I was brought up in this thing. I mean, it
Yeah.
was anonymous.
Yes, it's anonymous. And you know what? And Marty, I love AA. It's saved my life. I feel like I'm still a very proud member of AA. I still do some AA meetings. But it's just a little different from me now. And I don't know if I was starting to feel a little squirrely right before the pandemic about it because I was like, geez, I don't know. Maybe I've got 10 years. I'm just not going to do this anymore. But then AA snuck back in my head and go, oh, girl, you better not do that. And
Right.
so what else was I going to do? And voila, the pandemic hits and I can't go to meetings. So now what? I found this, I went on to Facebook first and found all these closed meetings, closed. Everybody's still closed. And then I'm going to be 60 for crying out loud pretty soon. And somebody told me about the Instagram thing, and I'm like, isn't that just like showing pictures of like cakes you bake and stuff like that? Like, I don't know what, I have no idea. And they were like, no, it's a little different. And the recovery world of Instagram blew my mind.
Right.
You can tell me your story. You could tell me more about sobriety. Let's just have a conversation. You tell me where you're coming from and what it was like for you and what it's like now for you.
I've really started I can tell my story. I used for 24 years.
Okay.
I've been sober for 20 years and 3 months. So my story literally could go on and on and on, because there's a lot of using and a lot of recovery.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to somehow condense it down a little bit. I mean, what it was like, we all know what it was like. That's what got us in these seats.
Yes.
That's what brought us here, is because what it was like was hell. I don't know where that fine line was crossed between when it was fun and when it became a need. I don't know when that happened. I just know that for me, it was very early on. I started using when I was 9 years old.
Really?
I had to have my stomach pumped from drinking too much alcohol at 9 years old. And by the time I was 14, I was sticking needles in my arm, hustling dope here and there and just doing the deal. And so that fine line, I don't know where it was. I have teenagers right now, and people will say, well, teenagers. And I don't, because I never got to be one. I never got to be a kid because I started using so early. So trying to understand their way of thinking has been a challenge for me, because all of the people that I knew when I was a teenager were much older and I lived by their rules, and so I just never really had that childhood. So, I would get in trouble from time to time, and the judge would send me to meetings, and I would have to get that little court paper signed. And so I knew that there was something out there that people were using to get sober. I never had a desire to get sober. I never, like, I would go to those meetings because I was forced to, and I would think like, wow, what a bunch of losers. I don't like them for the most part. They're all a bunch of old people, unless they was in there with me getting their court paper signed. And then we sat and whispered how much we hated them.
Yeah.
And so I went on to continue my using, and criminal activities. And then something happened. I was in 7 penitentiaries, 5 rehabs. When they say jails, institutions, and death, I've done it all. I've overdosed so many times. But something happened for me on my last prison term. I got out and I went to see the parole officer, like you're supposed to do when you get out. And we was talking, and she was telling me about, you got to get a job, you got to have a telephone. And, we didn't have cell phones back then. That's showing your age. But, she gave me the whole spiel of what I needed to do. I was like, okay, I've heard this 1,000 times. And so I got up to leave, and I said, oh yeah, do you need me to get one of those court papers signed? And she had my whole file on her desk, and it was, big. And she said, no. She said, you can do whatever. You can go back to prison, you can die, or you can get sober. It's up to you. And I don't know why at that point in my life that was so profound to me, but something clicked inside me. And, I had nothing. I literally got out of prison the last time, and I had the state issued clothes they gave you. I didn't even have pants. I didn't have shirt. I had no money. The prison gave me $50 when I got out. I don't know what it was God. There was no doubt that God was still directing my life. I might not have been listening all of the times before, but for whatever reason at that point I was. They had in the front office, the little pamphlets they have, and they had all these NA pamphlets and all that stuff. And I grabbed a meeting list, and I found a meeting. I left that office and I went to a meeting, and it was rough. It was rough going to meetings because, like I told you before, I hated you people. I did. I couldn't stand you. I didn't steal with you. I didn't use with you. I didn't do anything with you. And most of all, I didn't trust you at all. I wanted nothing to do with those people. But as a good addict, I thought I was pretty smart. And so I thought, if I go to these meetings for a couple of weeks, I'll hear from the old timers in there what they did. Then I can go about my business and not have to go to meetings anymore.
Yeah, of course.
Because since I was 14 years old, I'd been forced to go to meetings in some form or another,
And now how old were you at this time that you're talking about right now?
32.
32 at this time. Okay.
32. Yeah. I found out that it was very different. I got to those meetings and I had to put on that tough guy front. I'm a convict. I put on that tough guy front. I sat in the back of the room where the 2 walls met, with my chair in the corner where I could see the door and I could see the table, and I would listen. One thing that I did hear in those meetings was laughter.
Did it piss you off?
Honestly, it didn't piss me off. It was like for the past 10 or 15 years, there was no laughter in my life. I came from a very abusive household. My family brushed everything under the rug of how abusive my mother was. It was things that we didn't talk about. Me and my brother, we were belittled and screamed at and beat daily. It was just the way it was in our house.
So sorry.
And well, I'm looking back at it, and I'm as I'm sitting here, I'm trying to make a lot of changes in my life that I realized I'm acting like her. Whether it's with general public or whether it's with my children, I'm acting like her. And one thing that I always said, once I got clean and started putting things together, I will never be like her, never. And so I'm working really hard today on changing some of those behaviors. But when I was sitting around those rooms in the very beginning, like I said, I heard this laughter, and it wasn't fake. It was genuine, heartfelt laughter that these people were having. And then they would have these barbecues and functions. They would go bowling, or they would do all this stuff. And they would always ask, hey, do you want to come? Or, and I'd be like, no, I'm good. I don't do that. I'm just here for a minute, So I kind of dove into the program at that point because that laughter just, man, I can still see the people's faces today that were the ones that were always laughing. And I kind of dove into the program. and I started listening, and I still wouldn't share because I didn't want to share any of my personal life with those people, but I heard that you needed to get a sponsor, and I thought, okay, I can get a sponsor. There was this biker dude, and he had this long, like, they call them rat tails,
Yep.
and he had a lot of time, and I'd watch him, and of course I picked up on things in there, find a sponsor who has what you want.
Right.
This dude, he had all the motorcycles and a house and a job and all that, but he was a spiritual dude, and I could like feel his energy. The kicker to him was I didn't really like his personality, but like I said, I knew he was spiritual, and he didn't like me at all. And I think
you were a punk.
I was. And I
You
think
were a punk, and you already knew what you wanted to do.
Right. I thinking back on it, over the years, I had a huge ego. I was this.
That's a defense mechanism. Yeah, we defend ourselves. I'm not like you. Yeah.
Exactly.
I know what I got to do. Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
Oh boy, do I know.
Use like I used.
Yeah. Yep.
And
you don't know my story.
Right, exactly. And I asked him one night after the meeting, because everybody would stand out on the sidewalk and smoke cigarettes and stuff and laugh. And I said, hey, do you think we could grab a cup of coffee? And he was a pretty tall dude. He looked down on me and he said, yeah, I guess. And I said,
you're like, oh, great.
Yeah, instantly, there I am.
Regretted it.
Little kid again. And I'm like, so how about Village Inn? And he's like, yeah, all right, I'll be there in 15 minutes. So I went straight there, and I'm sitting in this booth, and he comes walking in, and he didn't even sit down. He just looked at me and he said, so what did you need? I was like, well, I've been listening in the meetings, and I need a sponsor, and you're him. He said, oh, really? He was like, you just decide I'm your sponsor, or, and I was like, well,
why not get a say in this?
Right. And so he sits down, and we talk for a second. He says, listen, he said, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think you've got a snowball's chance in hell of staying clean. He said, but I was taught that you never turn down a request. So I'll go ahead and do this if you want to. We'll try it for a few weeks anyway. So there I was, that little kid again, like wanting to clap my hands and like, oh, cool, I got a sponsor, and his name was Roy, and I still talk to him today. But I said, so what do you want me to do? And he said, I want you to go home tonight, and I want you to go to bed, get up in the morning, make your bed, and go to work. I got livid pissed. I said, listen, man, I've been doing time most of my life. I make my bed whenever they tell me to, and I don't want to clean my house, man. I want to stay clean. I don't want to use anymore. And he says, all right, so go home tonight, go to bed, get up in the morning and make your bed and go to work, because that's what normal people do. And I was once again kind of like at the parole office. I was like, normal people. And he says, let's try that for a couple of weeks, and we'll see where we're at. And Lori, today, my bed is made every day. Every day, whether I make my bed or my wife
choked up. I don't know why I'm getting choked up, but I'm getting choked up.
Well, and I do the same thing, and more times than not, when I share this part of my story, I do get very emotional, because it's a huge deal for me today. Huge deal. So still to this day, my bed's made. And I tell my sponsees to make their beds.
And go to work in the morning.
And go to work. That's what you do, Laying around till 10, 11 o'clock is not recovery, That's where the disease tries to trick us, right? And so I did this, with Roy for a few weeks, and man, I would tell him, every day, my bed's made, my bed's made. And you can tell he's just like, all right, just keep going. Well, it got to the point where I wanted to start working some steps. I've been making my bed now, and I'm doing the right thing. I want to start working some steps, because that's what they say in the meetings, work your steps, get a sponsor and work your steps. And so I said, I want to start working steps, but I don't want to deal with the God thing, because I don't believe in God. And he said, well, you don't have to believe in God. He said, but in order for this thing to work, you have to believe in a higher power. And what that higher power is your choice. If you read your book, it'll tell you a higher power of your understanding. And I was like, well, you know, in my mind, I'm like, I don't have a higher power. I'm the highest power there is, you know, because I'm so full of ego and all of that shit, right? I called him up one night and I had been reading the book and I said, man, I just can't get on board with the God thing. I really don't want to use, but I'm not going to do the God part of it. And he said, I told you, you don't have to do the God part of it. He said, why don't you use the group as your higher power? He said, when you go to meetings, you're not using, right? And I said, no. And he said, all right, so why don't you use the group as your higher power? It says right in the book, you know, a God of your understanding. So I was like, okay, I can get on board with that. You know, this group has really like started to change how I'm living.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I'll do that. And this went on for a while, you know, a couple of years actually. And whenever people would talk about God, I would never try to like persuade them to think my way or anything like that. I would just, whatever, you know, that's your deal. And I joined the bike club that my sponsor rode with, and it was a clean and sober bike club. And I was actually coming home from his house and I was going up the street and a little 18-year-old girl hit me head on, and she actually drove up on top of me. They couldn't, like, I could smell the gas and everything. I don't remember the impact, but I could smell the gas. I can remember there was a bunch of people came around from a restaurant that we was right in front of. And I was telling them, you've got to get me out of here because I'm thinking like you see on TV, everything's going to blow up.
Right. Oh my God.
But so her driver's side front tire had my right arm. She was on top of it and I was under the vehicle.
Oh my God.
And so I was telling these people, you've got to get me out of here. They were like, how? And I said, get a jack and jack up the front of the car and then pull me out. And the guy came back and he said, we can't find a jack. And I said, get 5 or 6 people and pick up on the front of this and pull me out of here. And they pulled me out from underneath the car. And at that time, the ambulance showed up. They loaded me in the ambulance and I was still pretty coherent.
Okay.
But then like the shock started to set in. I had 2 broken collarbones. All the ribs on one side was broken. My leg was broken. My finger was broken. And I had all kinds of internal bleeding. And somehow I stayed awake until they got me to the hospital. While I was in the hospital, I was in there it was like 47 days. But I was in intensive care for a month of that. And when I started to come to, my first sight was all of these big windows was all around like the front where I could see. And I'm kind of looking around and I'm thinking like, I'm in a warehouse and like these windows, and the lady that was working on me and tending to me, she had tattoos up her arms. You couldn't see any skin. She had earrings you could not have put another earring in her ear. She had so many earrings.
Okay.
And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, this bike club is legit, man. Like they've got me.
They got their own hospital.
Yeah, they've got me in a warehouse with this biker chick taking care of me. This is crazy. We'll come to find out, I'm in the ICU unit, and this lady with all the tattoos and earrings is my doctor. And I'm like, okay, cool. I can kind of like see how I was, messed up on that a little bit, but okay.
All right.
As they're like finally like getting me to where they can pull all the hoses out of my mouth and all of this, I still couldn't get out of the bed or anything like that, but I'm starting to remember stuff. And I know this is crazy, and I still today am like just blown away. But somewhere in there, I sat on a mountain with God. And I I told this story
Jesus Christ.
a lot of times, and I sat on a mountain with God, and I asked God some questions. Why me? Am I dying? And God said, no, you're not dying, and you chose this path, but I'm here as I've always been, and there's more for you to do. So I never really thought a whole lot more about it once they took me out of ICU, put me in a regular bed. I mean, it would cross my mind, and then they released me and sent me home. And of course, I can't walk. I got a broken leg. I'm all banged up. And I called up my sponsor. And the other thing that I want to touch on real quick before I get to that part is the amount of people from the program who supported me and was there every single day. When I got home, my house was immaculate. Food was in the fridge. People were calling, hey, gonna bring over some food. I mean, it was crazy how many people came up to the plate, but I called my sponsor. I was sitting there and called him up and I said, Roy, I said, man, you got to come over. I said, we got to talk about some shit. I'm on my way. And he came over and I said, dude, it's not the medication. It's not anything. It's just the way shit happened. I talked to God. And he's like, okay. And so I explained to him the story of sitting on the mountain and who my God was and how my God talked to me, and how he continues to talk to me today. And he said, right on. He said, welcome home, man. You had a spiritual awakening. And to this day, my higher power guides me in my recovery, of being service to others, in my family. And I am honored to be able to tell this story, because they said that I couldn't do it. They said that I was going to die a hopeless junkie, that I was worthless, I was unemployable, I was definitely unmarriable. I was raised thinking that I was just a piece of shit. And here I am today, And so after all this conversation with Roy and everything about God and everything, I started working steps, and I started praying, and I started meditating, and I started asking God to reveal more for me and show me more, because I want to stay clean and be a better person. That's what I want. And I think that it's happened, I think that it's happened for me. Like I said, I really dove into it and I worked steps like crazy, and I had a solid program. And once I healed up and I was like processing everything that's going on, I decided, I was in New Mexico at the time, and I decided that I needed to move home back to Wyoming so that my kids could be closer to their grandparents. And I don't know, it was just God was pushing me in this direction. And so I came home, man, and I was on fire for Narcotics Anonymous. And I opened meetings, I worked steps, I had tons of sponsees, I still kept my same sponsor. I got to a point where, I was watching the people in the rooms. I knew they were using, I knew that they were, and so I thought, I've been sober for going on 10 years now. I don't really need to go to so many meetings. I quit going to meetings. I just stopped going to meetings altogether. And I wasn't reading my books. I wasn't working steps. I would find myself when sponsees would be like, hey, can we get together? I would make excuses not to. I didn't need the program anymore, man. I was recovered.
Woohoo! I got it.
Right. Yeah. Right. I graduated. I completed a 10-year program, and
With honors.
yeah. Right. I mean, I talked to God. I don't need the program anymore. And I had a teenage son. Still have a teenage son, but at this time, he's not a teenager no more. But anyway, he was starting to dabble in and in trouble, and he had stolen my parents' credit card, and I found out about it. He was in trouble, and my parents came over. Well, and once again, I'm 10 years sober, man. I got figured out, man. My
You're going
parents
to tell
came
him
over.
what he's got to do, right?
Right, exactly. And everybody else too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when they came over, somehow I was like wrong. And I got pissed. I told my stepdad that, I was going to kick his ass. I was going to kick my son's ass. I was standing on my back porch, and my uncle, who is about 5'6", he's been sober now for 37 years, but he come walking up the stairs, and I mean, I'm towering over this guy, and he points his finger in my face and he said, "You shut your mouth and get in my car." And I bowed my head and I said, "Yes, sir." And I got in his car, and I tried to explain to him what was going on. And I kept telling him, like, I don't understand. I don't understand it. And he said, "What don't you understand? You stopped going to meetings. You stopped working steps. You stopped hanging out with the people who helped you get through this." He said, "You're like a dry drunk." He said, "Your problem is you need to get your ass back to meetings." And once again, there's God, right? He is putting somebody
He
in
was
my way.
5'6" that day.
He was 5'6" and mean,
He was mean.
he was, and I was like, well, I get it, and so I started going back to meetings and started working steps, and I didn't go to NA meetings anymore. I started going to AA meetings because my home group has been in Rock Springs, Wyoming, 4 years less than AA has been started.
Oh.
And so it's a very old home group, lots of recovery in there. So I started going and I started listening again, and I acted like a newcomer. I went there to listen and to learn and to figure out life all over again at 10 years sober, 10 years. And here I am again trying to figure out where my life is. All of this stuff from the time I got in my motorcycle accident through every single step of my life, right up to today, God has been. So like if you're driving down the road, you stay in the middle. There's a cliff on one side and a cliff on the other. You start to veer off, God kind of slaps you back to the middle until you're okay, right? And that's how my life has been. I go to a meeting on Thursday nights, and usually there's about 5 or 6 of us in there, and there's 150 years of sobriety sitting there. And they still have some reservations with the Recovering Out Loud. And little by little, I'm watching even the old timers are starting to get on board with it, because I think attendance is booming over Zoom meetings now.
Mhm.
I think that people that still go to in-person meetings, there's more because people are recovering out loud. And when somebody does say something to me about traditions, I simply say our primary purpose is to carry the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. That's our primary purpose,
That is our primary
and
purpose.
all those years of being anonymous, so many people were missing out on the message. So many people were missing out on it. And I don't hold any grudges. If you want to see me at a grocery store and act like we know each other from Mini Mart, cool.
Yeah.
But I know, and that we go to the same program, and I just choose today to recover out loud so that nobody has to suffer in silence, because for so long, so many people, myself included, didn't see a way out. And then through platforms like you have, Not So Anonymous, Lika's Pro Recovery Power, The Other Side of Hell, Valor Fitness Rising, these people are out there carrying the message of hope that we do recover. We do recover if we have the capacity to be honest. I just feel in my heart that God has guided me right here, right now, to spread that message of hope. Like I shared earlier, I was that guy who, all these kids get in the yearbooks at high school and stuff, most likely to succeed, whatever, most likely to die would be me if I was in there. You know what I mean? Growing up, I had nobody who really wanted to show me a way, and a lot of that was self-made because I wasn't having none of it. I was trying to score dope or get booze or whatever. I mean, and today, if I can touch one soul, I had somebody send me a message today and said, hey, I seen your Not So Anonymous podcast and you have inspired me to reach out. And I thought to myself after the conversation I had, that's what this is about. That's what doing this with you, with all of the other platforms that are around and Instagram, that's what recovery is about, is reaching out, one addict helping another, and I want to be a part of that. I want to see people succeed today. And not only that, I want to be a better person. I just want to be a better person today.
You are. You're a great guy. I can't thank you enough for doing this. I didn't know what to expect, and it was beyond my expectations. Honest to God, this was so wonderful. Keep in touch with me, my friend.
Absolutely. Lori, thank you so much. This has been awesome.
You enjoy the rest of your night, and thank you again. It was a pleasure. Have a good night.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you.